And welcome to our small business chat, as usual, Wednesday morning, 10 o'clock. And we're continuing with our series of all about PR. And of course, Christelle's the expert in this area. But I'm not going to do an interview style and question. We're just going to have a general chat. So talking about PR and all about the cost of PR, because I think this is a subject which has got a lot of controversial stuff about it. You know, people think that it can be really expensive. You know, what exactly is PR? You know, how much does it cost to hire an agency, or can you do some yourself or go to a freelancer? So, yeah, I mean, where should we kick off from?
Do you know what? I think the really interesting thing was, you know, when I did the poll like last week, and the two biggest factors, which I said last week in the introduction, was the two highest factors that people wanted to know more about was the cost of PR and measurement and evaluation. And I genuinely feel that people are going to find an issue with cost if they cannot understand what value it provides. And we're going to talk about measurement and evaluation, like how to actually find out where those golden nuggets are, because it's really hard. It's really hard when you're doing so much different types of marketing. How do you attribute like one thing to success when it could have been a joint effort between PR and social? You know, it could have been the fact that through a piece of PR, you checked onto a website, you clicked onto a website, and then because of some great, amazing tracking tool with Google Analytics or whatever it may be that's followed you going, oh, by the way, here's a reminder, you didn't check out, like something like that. It's at what stage, but it's all linked. And so I think that it's really hard to put a value on it. But I also see some amazing pieces of activity where they've had a brilliant client because of a speaking opportunity. That client's come up to them, or just by you being visible or appearing on a podcast or in a newspaper article, somebody's contacted you, or perhaps you've done your networking and you've been more visible that way, or you've written an amazing thought opinion piece that somebody's then come up to you. So you can really see a direct shift sometimes. But I liken PR to manners. Like, it's like this: if you're trying to build a brand, drip feeding doesn't quite work. You just want a steady flow, but continuously, to fill that pot or to build that brand. And sometimes I think people think of the cost element and they want to switch it on and then switch it off because of like cost. And it doesn't necessarily work like that. It means that you've got to do elements of PR. And I think when it comes to cost as well, there are so many things that you can do as a business owner that you don't need to hire a PR for. And it's understanding what elements that you could be doing. And then when you bring in that support, but then also what the different tiers are. Because, I mean, you and I worked back in agency. Do you remember? It was very much, it's a retainer. That's it. You have me for a year. You can't get rid of me. That kind of, and if you do, you still have to pay out like 3 months. But it's changed so much now. We've got freelancers that work on day rates. We have, PR support. I mean, it's a bit controversial for me, but because I don't particularly agree with it, but it's payment by results, as in you get a piece of coverage and you just pay for that coverage if that's media relations. And sometimes that can work a treat if it's flexible and you're getting out there, but I'm much more long-term brand building view. How does that piece equate back into marketing? And I feel that some of the people that might be doing payment by results, they don't look at the bigger pictures, so you'll only just get the results. But again, it might be perfect for you if you are that person that go, well, I'll take those results and I'm going to do the analytics and I'm going to review how I'm going to use that in the rest of my marketing. But from what I've seen today, I'd love to be proven wrong. I know there's some amazing paid by results teams that churn out that coverage. But it's not necessarily what I'd like to see for my industry, because I feel like there's so much work that goes on behind the scenes that to equate that, it's like charging for your hourly rate. I don't agree. It's like, I'll charge you for projects because it's my years of experience that I'm bringing in there, but to equate a piece of coverage as that's my worth, when it could have taken me 6 months to get that piece of coverage. It really is a way of PR that I don't really like to see. But having said
and
that,
it is. I mean, that's why I'm quite interested to go and see the sort of measurement in that, because it's how do you measure it? You know what I mean? You don't know how many eyeballs have got on that piece of PR coverage, and it could be months down the line. Someone says, "Oh yeah, I saw that piece on you," blah blah blah, and that could still be just sitting in their subconscious, whatever, and then they look at something else of yours. Yeah. And they don't know why they're recognizing it, but they've probably seen something before. So yeah, so I think it's really difficult to measure.
And I think the other way that you can do it is like where I've mentioned retainers before. I'm not against retainers for certain brands and what level you're at. Maybe you are someone that needs constant, like fashion, for example, they have seasonal collections. So, that's going to be new throughout the year. Twice a year, they're going to have their sort of spring, summer, autumn, winter collection, and it's consistent. So yeah, perhaps you might need, in that respect, you are going to need more ongoing support. But one of the things that I set up when I set up my business, I was like, well, it doesn't always fit. So why don't we offer a retainer? Like you can have a retainer, but you can also have projects as well. Let's have a look at projects. And so there's a pay-as-you-go sort of model, which, fun enough, I was speaking to another PR, and I thought he meant pay-as-you-go as in pay by results, but he actually means like more projects, flexible style of working, and I think that's brilliant.
Because you can then just focus it on something quite targeted and specific, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly.
You don't have to be tied in for the long term. Sometimes people just need that, I suppose, that little boost or that campaign for something that they're launching. I suppose like a launch project as well could be quite similar to that.
That was it. I had a client that, from food and drink perspective, they would have various festivals or projects like launches. So, he could see what was coming up during the year, and they've already got a big following. So, they've got newsletter, they've got social media. So most things might be, well, if it was any other angle, we don't need to use PR for that. But for a specific launch, okay, let's drop you in. Let's add you to that marketing mix for media relations. But the interesting thing was that I would speak to them throughout the year. Like we were always in contact, so we'd probably charge a little bit more, but it meant that if, say, for example, and this is the other reason with like payment by results, is that I could have sent out a press release for a launch, and that journalist or that title just won't be ready for it. They've either got pieces backed up that they need to get out, or it's not ready, or they think, actually, I've got something coming up like 4 months away. I'm going to hold on to that. I'll file it, and then I'll come back to you. So, just because you have finished your project, it's like, oh my God, we can't miss this opportunity. We want to work with that, they're a target piece of, a target publication or channel, then absolutely we're going to work with them. So, you might charge a little bit more for a project, but it means that it covers any extra ad hoc work. So there are more flexible ways of working. I'm going to go into the prices straight away because I'm up for being fully transparent. If you go onto my website, like you're actually going to see the start from prices, because the way that I see how I work with clients, which more and more PRs are doing, you could be doing training, you could be doing consultation, or you could be doing that done for you service. So where I can do a set price, I'll put it up there. So, I've seen training up to like, I don't know, quite low to like 200, 300, up to 800, depending on the teams, what it is. So it can really vary from that point. I'm sort of like slap bang in the middle because I really love to take a more personalized, tailored approach. So when I'm doing training, we know that client inside out. You've been with me on some of the trainings for social, but when I've done the training, like I will literally dig down and find out what that client is all about. And actually, if I'm training you, how is it that what you're going to learn can be applied to your business? Not just
something that could be implemented straight away as well, isn't it? It's not just a generic, okay, well, here's a kind of formula to follow. I think it's really difficult for people to go, okay, now how does that apply to me and how do I put it in that way? So I think that's hugely valuable.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing is consultation. So again, it can really vary. You can have somebody that's got a day rate of 800 quid. You can have someone that's got a day rate of 200 quid. So it really can, you know, how much are they going to need you to be that consult? I tend to do a package again. This is just to give you guidelines. This is not sales. This is actually just to give you guidelines. But I mean, again, for launches and strategy, around like the £500 mark is probably something that is, you know, I haven't seen much more different than that. But again, it really can tell. You might have somebody that's really experienced that, you know, can do it for cheaper, but also, you know, it really just depends on where they are in their business. I've been quite steadfast. I've always charged as if, you know, because I bring agency experience for so many years and that experience counts. So I wouldn't overprice myself. I know some people again that are further down, but I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah, but also there's that, you know, you say that and people go, oh, okay, well that might just be sort of a couple of hours or half day or whatever that may be, or a day rate, but you're also putting in a lot of work pre and post that, aren't you? I think people tend to forget that. So you're doing the research before so that you can tailor that training when they do come to you, and then you've got the follow-up afterwards, and you know, emailing them back and following up and stuff like that. So it's not, so I think people need to be aware of that as well, don't they?
Same with the consultation.
And I think that applies to anything that you're doing, any marketing or consultation. There's always a lot of work that goes in pre and post, not just that time that you're together.
And I think as well, so again, from an ongoing retainer basis, again, I've seen people charge a lot less, but if you're going to hire someone, it might depend on sort of the level that you, so a freelancer might provide a day rate. So again, I've seen on average, I'd probably assume that a PR freelancer that's good would be about £250 a day upwards. You know, it really will depend on their expertise, their experience, what it is out of the PR requirements that you need them for. So, you know, it might vastly differ if it's media relations, if it's consultation, if it's, you know, lobbying, if it's, you know, all of these elements of PR that people just only think about media relations. It will really go up and down the scale based on what it is that you require them to do. But there are freelancers out there, and actually there is a community. If you go onto Facebook, it's a freelance PRs like /jobs. You know, you can put in your request. There might be people there. I think there's a gentleman called Nigel Starbucks who does the PR cavalry, so much more formalized process. So he does both, which is great. So the PR cavalry, I've seen put a job out to tender, but there are freelancers out there, and more of us are stepping into our own businesses, wanting to work on our terms. So the resources are there, and we've seen a big rise of people actually trying to work on their own.
And I think just what you said there, I mean, you say there's lots of people out there. I mean, if I was looking to work with someone, and I know other people as well, they're looking for someone specific with that type of expertise in your niche.
Yes, so, sometimes, yeah, you're right. You're absolutely right.
Because you know that they're going to have the good contacts with the right types of magazines or radio stations, or know the right journalists. I mean, I know that comes to media relations, but even in terms of social media, they might have that network of people that they could push that message out to as well on things like, you know, on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, etc. So, you know, I think going for someone whose values are aligned with your own and experience in that audience is also there. And then again, you know, would you pay more for that? Yes, I think I would, because you've got someone quite specific.
See, that's so interesting. So yeah, I do have my specialisms and my areas of expertise, I would say that, but I've never positioned myself into one niche. So as you know, you knew me from travel, then I was doing food and drink. I've done a little bit of motoring, I've done beauty, I've done a little bit of fashion, I've done more lifestyle, I've done FMCG brands. So interestingly, it's interesting what you say, because where does the cost come into it? Yeah, you might pay more for somebody that's experienced, but I have a particular criteria as the type of companies that I want to work with, and they're more brands with purpose, or businesses with purpose. And it's never put me off working for a client that I don't necessarily know much about the industry, because I'm just that type of person that I'm going to dig down, learn as much as I can. I mean, I didn't know anything about the coffee.
Yeah, but yeah, for me that's a niche though. Working with brands with purpose, that is a niche. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, it's just like I work with eco businesses, but then eco-driven business owners, but they all it's all a lot of different industries. I mean, I can't possibly know about every single one of those industries.
I know,
you know what I mean? It'd be crazy. But there's that common niche where it's the type of values and purpose driven businesses. So
yeah, it's quite interesting. But it's really interesting to say, and I think again that cost, the whole issue of cost, the reason that we're bringing it up is that you're more informed when it comes to, right, realistically, when do I outsource and what is the cost? But we're also going to talk about, like, shortly, about the different areas that you could be doing yourself, but as well what would impact that cost and the types of people that would be of benefit. Because if you know that you've got a requirement of what you need from PR, you will then write the right brief, and then you will then go find the right person. And so most of the time it is based on cost. You know that you can't afford X or whatever, but sometimes you might find someone that would work really, really well because they have got the same values, they understand your drive, you can see them more as an extension, as part of the team, because they might not have the same experience as in that you had thought, but have other experience. They might also bring in a different perspective to help you drive that company forward. So yeah, it's really interesting when you think about cost, like what is cost. I was just going to say as well, the pay-as-you-go projects and the retainers in terms of monetary, it can really vary, but I would honestly, if you're looking to understand how much to pay, so for a launch, again, it might be that a freelancer will say, well, I'll give you X amount of days, or here's a project fee. It's higher, isn't it? I mean, I just think, again, the size of the company, you know, whether or not you're using a freelancer, it can vary from sort of, like, I would say, I personally wouldn't charge anything less than 1,000 a month, you know, like as in, or for a project. You know, it's probably about 1,500, but for like a 3-month like campaign, or like a 2-month or a 1-month campaign, upwards. It really just depends on what you're asking me to do, because it's rarely just media relations. It's, oh, can you help us with, you know, how does this fit into our social, how does this fit into our, you know, industry, how does this fit? So again, it's really basing up on what you're going to need a month. So I'm just being really honest in terms of monetary figures, but what I want to really stress, and I cannot stress this enough, you can always do elements of PR yourself. So usually when I have a discovery call with somebody, the way that I see it is that you can break down PR into 3 elements. You can have it as storytelling, like that's the core of what we do. What is your brand messaging? Like, where's that know, like, trust factor? So, you know, we take that story and we would say, right, where are we going to share that with your public or your audiences? But you could be doing that if you had done some really good solid brand work. You know that your messaging and your, you know, unique value proposition, you know, you've got to communicate that, you know, you've got to put that on your social media, you know, that's got to be present in maybe your website, you know, it's got to be clear in the content that you're producing so that people can stand up. I still, to this day, when people are coming to me saying, I always ask about clients and their story, like, what made you, how did you start your career? What was it that you love about your career? I always try and find that to connect with it. And then they start to tell you this amazing story about themselves. This has literally just happened like last week. Like, my mouth just dropped, because I've been following on, you know, this lady on social for absolutely ages, and none of this has come out. Like, none of this. And I'm like, but there's your expertise. There is your, you know, this is what you need to talk about. This is your area, your zone of genius. And I've not seen that in any of your posts. Like, you can put that storytelling element into other channels before you have to put it in a press release to send it out to media.
Yeah, but this is where you could help. So people, so I mean, ideally, I would sort of go, okay, well, I've done my branding or whatever, but I don't know if I've quite got a story that I could send out to say if it was for media relations or applying to be on a podcast or go on the radio or whatever it may be, I would want to probably come to you and say, right, have a consultation, and you go, okay, well, these are all the different areas that we could go out and put things out. Now, where is it that you need help? Okay, so there's, you've got your outline of your story, but you've worked with me, sort of helping me craft things, you know, like for newsletters and stuff like that. So it's really handy having someone there to work with in that way and get certain parts right, get feedback on, get input on. And then, as you say, you can go, okay, well, this bit, actually, I could do that myself, but I need help with this, and so on.
To draw out the story. I mean, again, PR for me it's about reputation. So whatever you're talking about, you know, from internal to external, what is it that you want to communicate, but also who is your audience? Like, how is what you're going to say going to be relevant for them? And so if you were at like an eco meetup and you're doing a talk, you know, again, you know, what we had said about, you know, if you're doing a workshop or a talk, what's the about you section? Like, you know, why are you here? And you hadn't really thought about that. It's like, no, you're so experienced. You really have to bring that up there because you are the expert. And a lot of the times we don't realize why we're the expert. We just need somebody, perhaps a third party, or perhaps even a friend, like somebody that knows you're a really good business buddy, can sit down with you and go, oh my God, you've forgotten this, you've forgotten that. We don't shout about ourselves enough. And I love it when I'm looking at people that do, that help others with speaking and, you know, talk about their stories. They say the same thing. So whatever element you're doing, if it's written, if it's speaking, if it's, you know, presentations, like find that story and how you're going to tell it, how it's going to be relevant, and how it's going to impact the person that's listening to it. Is it going to inspire them? Is it going to educate them? So making sure you've got that story right. So that's like the first level of sort of like PR. It's all about the story. And then I would say the next level would be about building relationships and connection in PR and building up that reputation. So where are you? How are you building those relationships? Like, are you networking? Are you going to industry events? Are you getting involved in the conversations? Are you doing work in your community? You know, how are you building your relationships internally with your team? So all these elements are here that, again, you could be doing these things yourself, and you wouldn't necessarily have to hire someone. Unless you're a big organization, an internal comms professional, that's where you might need the expertise. But, you know, we're on Small Business Chat. Like some of this stuff, I always say, treat people like you want to be treated. If my boss wasn't communicating to me, I'm not going to feel really engaged with my job, you know. And so likewise, you want more information, you want to keep them involved. All these elements are into it. So I think building relationships and connections key, maintaining those relationships, making sure that they feel valued. As Maya Angelou says, you know, people don't remember what you said, what they did. It's how you made them feel about themselves. And for me, like that element of PR and relationship building and connection, you know, I'm saying the things that will connect with you. I'm behaving in a way that either inspires you or you feel grateful for. All these elements that you could be doing. And then the third element is partnerships and endorsement. So that's where the media, that the external factor comes in. So you might need other brand recognition, other organizations, media. That's where you're doing that work to sort of amplify your message through other people's channels. So again, it's here that you might need a bit more help because you might not know who they are. Sometimes it's just down to time. You know, I've done some work with people and they're about to do a launch. They're like, right, where are you going to appear? And we've gone through all of the different channels and networks that they could possibly connect with, and they've missed half of them. They didn't know that they existed.
Right, okay.
And again, sometimes working with someone, it's like, right, if I asked you to do it, would you have the time to do it? Or do you need to outsource? Like even your VA could do it. Like actually, this again is not something where that cost level comes in. There are elements of PR that you could be doing at such a solid foundation that you and your team, your VA, don't double the fee by asking, oh, I must have a PR to do it. By understanding what the level of PRs are at and how you could be doing it. You could be doing it yourself internally through existing resources, Again, the amount, you know, I've had clients that have come up to me and said, oh, we need to promote that we're at this event. It's a big event, we're showcasing there, so we want some PR around it. And I'm just gone, that event has its own PR. Have you spoken to their PR? No. Well, you need to give their PR some information. Why are you paying me when the official PR channel, like they're crying out for information because they've got to promote it? So what could you be doing to give that to that PR? You know, could you be creating offers? Could you be creating things in your business? Or some, you know, is there a special day that you're doing an event at on your stall, on your during that launch, that this PR needs to know about, so they can push through social, because I'm more likely to be following that event's PR and social media activity if I were a journalist.
Exactly, because you're getting everything in one place rather than trying to find, can you imagine, like at a trade show, how many thousands and thousands, and if they all got their own PR channels, you'd never be able to keep up. It would just be so much noise, wouldn't it?
Well, this is why they have a journalist centre. This is why they ask exhibitors, put your press releases in there. This is why the only thing that I would say, if it was a big exhibition, then yes, you would build up your relationships with certain journalists beforehand and say, oh, come along, pop to the show. We're going to talk through all of our news. Can we get an interview? You know, you really want to cover our news. You've done that in-depth job. But, you know, if you're a small business, there is, and your resources and your budget's limited, again, you can be far more savvy by going, right, well, I know that organization has a marketing team, or and that's again sometimes where you sit down and go, well, you don't need to double up on costs. Or actually, like you said earlier, if you don't have a news story, and it's, you know, you can try and get that information out there, or it's not something that is high on the media agenda, you can try and get some PR coverage out there, and there's some really fun ways about it. But the other thing that people don't talk about is that you have the fees for PR. So what's my time, expertise value? But there are also expenses. So do you have photography? Do you have, you want to do this event, but do you have, like, you know, if you wanted to do a stunt to get some publicity around it, you know, that costs, you know, when I've worked on brands, you know, we've had to have a budget to create the stunt to get the coverage, or create the activity to get the coverage. So little things like that, there's all these elements that were in there. So if you're a smaller business, let's look at what we can reuse, repurpose. If there is a strong news story, absolutely makes sense. And you know, sometimes you just don't have the time, you don't have the resources, you want somebody to make those connections for you. I understand what level you might need that at, but just, you know, I think that's the conversation around cost and PR. What do you really need? What teams and resources have you got internally first that you could be doing at it? Sometimes when I write the plan or the strategy down, you know, we're having this discussion, like that's why when I do the consultation, it's more, this is what I'd really like you to do. Now, before we go off and sign off on anything, what can you realistically do, and what can you realistically spend on? Or if at this time it's not quite right, what are you going to have to forego and focus on instead?
Yeah, that's really good. I think it's coming to you with that expertise, because there's so many things people would not have even thought about.
Yeah,
you know what I mean, they may come up, but they may come up with some great ideas in that, but you know, when it comes to things like endorsements and knowing the right people, and as you said, an event, why, you know, getting PR, why not using the actual event or the exhibition's PR? You know, people need to come to someone like you who's got the expertise to tell them that.
Yeah,
I think it's really important, isn't it, just to have that conversation with you, or consultation in the first place, and then work it out from there.
Yeah, there are so many good PRs out there. I mean, we do have a bit of a bad rap, like most industries, of, oh my God, like, I don't understand, you know, if I pay this, this is why I do what I do. I have had, you know, and it's not to diminish any of my brilliant colleagues that are out there, because there's so many shining examples that I know, or I've got to meet like online, offline over the past 10 years, that we just, like, you know, like you and I have the same value. It should be in the interest of the customer or the client. You know, that's why we're here, to help them, not necessarily to put me in a wonderful office it's all shiny that, you know, I'm going to charge the client for. But, you know, equally, if we're doing well, we need a team. Yeah, that is reflected in our costs. We need to hire people of quality to handle it. So, you know, it's all reflected in the cost, but there are some amazing flexible ways of working. But I do, you know, my last point is that when it comes to cost, and I said this in my post, there has been like two types of clients. You know, you have to recognize that PR and marketing, it's all an investment. It's not just a cost, it's an investment. You have to invest into it and do it properly in order to get that return. And again, it's that long-term gain. So you're either going to recognize that and you're that type of client. And it's fine if you say, I can't do PR just yet. That's fine. What other things can we do? Or you're going to be another type of client, and this does happen, and I'm sorry that, you know, if it has happened to you, where you're burnt, you know, you've spent money on PR, you just didn't know what that really got you. You probably either didn't get any coverage because they didn't work with you properly enough, or they weren't honest with you to say there's no story here, or you got coverage and you didn't understand how to maximize that, put that back into your marketing machine. You know, it was, and that has happened because we were so, you know, media relations is 94% of us still do a form of media relations in our activity as a PR professional. So it's going to be a strong part of what we do, but there is a lack of understanding or cooperation with the client to say to them, once you've got this piece of coverage, where are you going to put it? Legally, like you can't just put it all over your website, your social media, you'll get fined. You know, legally, how can you put this back into your marketing mix? How can we showcase this? How can we show, oh, look, you know, how can we talk about it in a way that positions you as an expert, positions you as a leader?
I think that's really valuable, as you know, as well from that point of view, because like you say, I mean, I only found out, I mean, I think you told me maybe last year before about that you can't just sort of copy and paste.
No, you cannot.
You can't just screen grab the article and stick it on your website or share on social media or something.
The Newspaper Licensing Authority are like HMRC and small businesses. They will come down at you for any little thing. Please be careful. But yeah, I think it's to do with education. It's to do with understanding. And really, you know, when I've worked with clients and we've had a really good experience, they're like, oh, I now get it. Right. Okay, brilliant. But,
and then it's investment, like you say, but in the long term, and awareness, isn't it? So the same thing used to happen. I don't know if it's still like that, but when you were doing social media marketing, like social media management for companies, and they go like, okay, well, what's that? That's so many, you know, 300 quid a month or whatever. What is that going to get me? What are my results? You know, how many sales am I going to get out of that? And it's really hard to quantify, because it's also based on what they're doing on their website and what they're doing outside of that, because as you say, everything's interlinked.
Yeah,
you could be doing a great job of putting out posts and everything on social media, but if there's no call to action or conversion on the website, or they're not doing other things, they haven't created a product or something around that in order to convert, then you're not going to get the results. But there's also that element of actually you're getting awareness. You'd be doing this yourself. You just don't have the time to do it, which is why you've hired someone to do that for you. So why are you putting the that demand on them that I want to get blah 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 clients for my £300 a month that you're doing? Do you know what I mean? There's an element of actually you've got to get the work done. And then there's that other element, which I think is right. If you really focus on conversion, then you should be paying a lot more and doing a lot more other activity around that.
Also, it's like there's the basic, just be out there, just be visible, just post. Like if you cannot think about having a strategy right now, at least just posting, because like even at this level, I'm so surprised at lurkers that haven't commented or liked, and just by me posting something on clients, you know, somebody said, oh my God, my colleague or somebody else said that they saw that post, or I was saying that to somebody else, you know, just by commenting and being active and like networking, offline, just being visible online and connecting and engaging, that says a lot. People are seeing you and they're interested in what you're saying. They might not necessarily follow you straight away, but how many times have I followed a client or an account because I like the look of something, and then somebody's asked me for a recommendation and I'll say, oh, that's in your area, or they do what you've just said. I haven't bought it myself, but I've been lurking, I've been watching that client or that brand, more so. I've been following what they do, so I know about them in order to recommend them. Well,
and are they going to ask and find out that came via you who had been lurking following them? Do you know what I mean? So that's what I'm saying. It is really hard to trace it, but and then sort of try and put a cost to it. I mean, I had, talking of lurkers, someone got in contact with me on LinkedIn the other day, messaged me. I'd been in contact with about 7 or 8 years ago, and said, oh, I keep seeing your posts coming up on my feed. And, you know, so I thought I'd get in touch, how are things going? So you just don't know, you know, how much that getting that information out there and that coverage, PR coverage or post or whatever you're doing, you know, who it's hitting.
Yeah, absolutely. I think as well, when you're showcasing how your credibility, because you've had that endorsement, you know, I'm not saying don't promote your coverage, like please do, just understand the parameters of it. Yeah. But what I would say is, you know, when you are talking about, like, even if you've been on podcasts, if you've shared, you know, been on other shows, you know, talk about it, because it's your expertise and you've got a voice there, and you are the expert. So yeah, it's all fascinating. I think
definitely. I mean, just one on that, sort of the shows I do Tuesday, and I encourage people to share it kind of pre and post, and some people don't because they're quite nervous because it's the first time they've gone live, so they don't want to promote it. And the ones that have really promoted it, you can see the views,
yes,
just go through the roof, and you know, the engagement and everything else. So yeah, if you're not promoting it, it's just like, sometimes it's like, why are you doing it then? This is a real opportunity for you to show your case, your expertise, and get out there.
What's happened to me, like, since I've been doing Small Business Chat, I've been asked on probably 4 or 5 podcasts or like other conversational pieces, and I've loved it. And there have been times where it was like, oh my God, I'm just so busy. Like, I just actually didn't promote that. And I feel really bad, but I understand why. But having said that, you know I've seen from our show, like I've seen from this show, who we've had on again and again because they've engaged, and I've seen who's following who now. And so this is why, again, top and tailing, it's not just appearing somewhere, it's using social to back that up, and then have the conversation online. So yeah, there's so many elements of it, of how to make it work, how you could do it yourself, the different cost and flexible options that there are. I ultimately would say transparency and better understanding. Transparency from the person that you're working with, like who you choose to work with, how transparent are they, how real they are, like, as in, you know, let's be realistic. I like to be, I call myself an optimistic realist. So I'm going to look at the situation, I'm going to go, right, we're going to have a challenge here, here and here, but I think it's enough to try and work it, because it's test and trial. I won't know until I start pitching in. I won't know how journalists are picking up, because I don't know everything. I can monitor the news as best I can, but there could be a reason, which has happened before with a client, where they wouldn't use it, and it's only because I had a very honest conversation with 2 journalists that said, this is why they'll probably think you're in conflict and won't want to support you unless you've advertised. And then I have that conversation with editors, and then you could go back to the client and go, I pitched it in, they don't like your angles for this reason or this reason, but did you know that you're in competition with maybe a main advertiser, or you're in competition with what they value or what they want to promote? So where you think you're being a solution and it's really innovative, you're actually going to take away. So again, understanding that transparency of what works, and go, right, but we can work with them this way, we can use their channels this way. So there's always a way around it. So that's where the optimism side comes into it.
That's where your expertise comes into it as well. Yeah,
but then there's also got to be some shift in mindset for the client to understand how PR and marketing, like all elements, really work. But how many times do people like hire an SEO company and then after 1 month going, oh, I'm not on number 1, like page number 1 of Google? No, it'll take you about a year if you're lucky, like 6 months miraculously if it's something really niche. But you know, you've got to build it up. It does not come overnight. So understand.
I know people think that happens as soon as the website's built.
Am I not number one on Google? Shocking.
Build it and they will come, and I'll be number one on Google straight away with my new website. So it's an education process, but I think people are becoming more and more aware about it. It's just a bit like digital marketing was back 10 years ago, isn't it? It was just like you have to educate people on the value of it, and then sort of tell them why they should invest in it. So yeah, it was a tough call.
It is shifting your understanding as a client. It is not a cost, it is an investment. Understand and actually how to run with it, play with it, you know, test it. It is something that, you know, like it's going to be a skill that you perfect. And if you're working with the right person, or you have that PR mindset in your company from the offset, what parts can you do yourself? What parts do you need to outsource? Because you might not have the expertise all the time. You know, there are flexible ways of doing it. So I hope that sums up more about the cost, where the value of it lies. We will go into measurement and evaluation as part of this series, which will really nail it down. But I think at the end of the series, you should be able to have a better understanding. So when it comes to briefing, you find a better like PR partner or marketing partner for you, and how to get the results that you need. But as always, if you have any questions, you pop them down in the comments before. You can DM me. You can even book in a discovery call. It's free. It's 30 minutes. It's quick.
Yeah, I was just going to say, what the best way to sort of, if people want to start the conversation with you, is just booking a discovery call, and then you can advise on what their best options are.
Yeah, and you know where to find it. You know, it's not that I cannot physically take on all these clients. So as in, I always, and I might not have the expertise. We talked about niche earlier. But I might sit there and recognize you're going to need a niche person in your industry, because there's a technical aspect that I cannot get my head around. I'm just not that clever.
Yeah, so you would
learn it.
Something else.
Most things I can get, but yeah, there's a lot of stuff that I'm like, no, that's too technical, or there's too much legislation or law or elements around it that I think you'd be better off learning, you know, working with someone that can get through it faster. Yes, thank you guys for joining. But yeah, hope that helps you as well, because I think from a new business perspective, this is why I love your input and conversation, that you're going to ask the questions as a new business owner, but also as a service provider.
Yeah, no, definitely. Well, hopefully I've asked the right questions and we've covered most of what people want to know. But yeah, keep the questions coming and the comments coming below. It's both on Christelle's channels and my channel. But yeah, if you want to get in touch with yourselves, well, it's kvcoms.com, and booking a discovery call with her.
So we'll see you next week. Brilliant.
Next Wednesday.
Thank you guys. Take care. Bye.